June 4, 1757. Despite his successes in the first year of the 7 Years' War, King Frederick of Prussia now finds his army in a precarious position. The previous year, Frederick had launched a preemptive attack against Saxony, knocking them out of the war after narrowly defeating an Austrian relief force at the Battle of Lobositz. After wintering in Saxony, the Prussian king then drove south, defeating the main Austrian army in Bohemia outside of the walls of Prague. As the month of May comes to a close, Frederick receives news that a large Austrian force is marching to relieve their besieged comrades in Prague. Early reports indicate that this force is nearing 54,000 men under the command of the newly promoted Field Marshal Daun. The Prussian king immediately splits his forces, leaving behind 10,000 Prussians to contain 46,000 Austrians in Prague, and marches 33,000 men on a forced march east with the hope of catching Daun's Austrians by surprise. Historically, Frederick didn't hear of Daun's force until early June, and by the time he reached the Austrians' positions, Daun had dug in along the high ground, daring the Prussian king to attack. The resulting chaotic battle was Frederick's first defeat of the 7 Years' War. But in our scenario today, we gave Frederick an advance warning about Daun's reinforcing army. By early June, both armies are marching towards each other, neither side knowing exactly where the other is. After a long day of marching, both armies' advance scouts bring reports of enemy forces ahead. King Frederick elects to divide his forces, personally leading the left wing down the Imperial Road and sending his right wing under Prince Moritz von Anhalt-Dessau to secure the heights to the south. Each Prussian wing has an elite infantry brigade and a normal infantry brigade, supported by a light cavalry brigade and a heavy cavalry brigade. Though originally assigned to his army, Frederick dispatches his artillery to Przyrewski Hill to the south, with orders to hold to the last gun. Field Marshal Daun has not been idle, however, and has deployed more than half his strength on the eastern end of the ridge, with a token force defending the Imperial Road, and Grenzers rushing forward to harass the advancing Prussians. Daun takes personal command of the centre of the Austrian force, issuing orders to 4 infantry brigades, along with a handful of Grenzer units and the army's heavy artillery. General Serbelloni commands both 2 heavy cavalry and 2 light cavalry brigades, which have been divided and placed on both wings. He also commands an infantry brigade and an undersized grenadier brigade, which have deployed on the extreme left flank under his personal supervision. With the sun sinking low in the sky, both armies rush forward to seize favourable positions for the next day's fight. On the Prussian left flank, Frederick rushes cavalry to secure the Imperial Bridge as well as the ford at Chotzenitz. Though Prussian hussars quickly secure and cross the Imperial Bridge, the dragoons are slowed down by the tight streets of Chotzenitz and make slow progress. It will take them nearly 2 hours to reach the ford. On the right flank, General Anhalt-Dessau secures a strong position on Przyrewski Hill, with the artillery commanding the centre and his light cavalry securing his extreme right flank and his heavy cavalry in reserve. Daun realizes that if the Prussians on Przyrewski Hill are given time to prepare, any attack on their position the next day would be nearly suicidal. Hoping to catch Anhalt-Dessau off guard, Austrian infantry columns in the centre surge forward, as Serbelloni's cavalry and infantry double time on the flank march. On the opposite side of the battlefield, Austrian hussars notice the Prussian light cavalry crossing the Imperial Bridge and ride forward at a gallop, unleashing a carbine volley at point-blank range, inflicting heavy losses. The Prussian cavalry breaks and scatters, not reforming until back across the stream. Meanwhile, the slow going of the Prussian dragoons allows Austrian Grenzers to take up defensive positions around the Chotzenitz ford, laying in wait for the unsuspecting cavalry. In the centre, Prussian heavy artillery rushes forward and unlimbers, unleashing a hail of round shot that goes skipping through Daun's 2nd Infantry Brigade, inflicting heavy losses as the 2nd Infantry is still advancing in column. The men break and flee, but are quickly rallied by Daun himself as he rides to the front. The 2nd and 4th Austrian infantry brigades quickly shake out into line and prepare to assault the Prussian guns. On the Austrian left, things are going Austria's way as General Serbelloni steals a march on General Anhalt-Dessau, managing to ambush the Prussian light cavalry with his own hussars, who unleash a devastating short-range volley with their carbines, sending the unsuspecting Prussians fleeing. In the confusion and growing darkness, the panicked Prussian hussars ride right in front of their own artillery, forcing the guns to fall silent. With his flank now perilously exposed, General Anhalt-Dessau rushes his elite infantry to the flank and commits his heavy cavalry reserves. The Prussian cuirassiers come crashing down the hill into the Austrian hussars, who melt away with light losses, only beginning to reform when they are safely behind friendly infantry. The Prussian heavy cavalry carry on and catch the Austrian heavy cavalry in column, inflicting heavy losses and driving them back. Though General Anhalt-Dessau has stabilized the Prussian right flank on Przerewski Hill, Frederick's push across the small stream on the left has gone from bad to worse. As the Prussian dragoons finally push out of Chotzenitz and to the ford, the Austrian Grenzers spring their trap, unleashing a hail of lead into the unsuspecting cavalrymen. Suffering heavy losses, the dragoons cut and run, fleeing through Chotzenitz and into the fields beyond town. Meanwhile, Frederick's elite infantry rush across the bridge and form a hasty line on the far bank to engage with the Grenzers and approaching Austrian infantry. This bottlenecks the Prussian infantry following on the Imperial Road, and they struggle to form up on the far side of the stream. The Prussian hussars, who were thrown back earlier in the battle, reform and push across the stream north of the bridge. But with the rough terrain, the going is slow, and as night falls, they have only just made it to the far bank. As daylight fades, both armies begin to disengage. On the Prussian right flank, Anhalt-Dessau had secured an impressive defensive position, while on the left, Frederick's bridgehead across the stream is too small, and in the darkness, his forces withdraw to the western bank and bivouac for the night. In the Austrian camp, Field Marshal Daun is pleased with his army's performance. Though Count Serbelloni's hasty assault on Przerewski Hill was blunted, Austrian casualties remained relatively light. Though Prussian artillery inflicted casualties on his infantry in the centre, his men had rallied quickly, even if they were somewhat reluctant to advance again. But his army's true success had been away from his oversight on the far right of the battlefield, where the Prussian king himself had thrown forward his elite infantry and cavalry, and the Austrian troops had prevented any breakthroughs.